Alright, so I'm going to show you my way of butchering a deer and getting it processed yourself so you don't have to pay to get it processed. It's not hard, it takes a little time and it takes a little learning, getting used to where to cut and all that. It's pretty simple. I'm going to show you what I know. I'm not an expert butcher. I'm not a butcher at all. I just learned how to butcher deer through going through a bunch of deer myself, and I'll show you what I know and how easy it is and how you can save a little money and make sure you get as much meat as you want off of your deer you kill. So first of all, you need a sharp knife. It doesn't have to be a special kind of knife. This is a boning knife. It's used for butchering like this. I got it pretty cheap from a food service store. You could use your folding knife or whatever. Kitchen knife, as long as it's sharp. That's the main thing. You really want it to be sharp, especially when cutting around those joints, and because that makes life a lot easier. So use a sharp knife if you can. It'll help a lot, and that'll make your the whole process go a little smoother. Now, you don't have to hang your deer to butcher it, but it makes everything go a lot quicker. It's a lot easier to get to your whole deer and skin it out and do everything with a gambrel. It's not expensive at all. This, I think, is like a $20 gambrel from Walmart or something. If you do the deer on the ground, you're just going to have to skin it one side, butcher it one side at a time, and flip it over, do the other side. So I'm going to be doing this on a gambrel, of course. Now with the deer hung up from its hind legs, I like to start by skinning out the hind quarters, and I try to keep as much fur and dirt off the meat as possible, because that'll get your meat dirty, contribute to spoiling, all that stuff. I like to take the knife and go under the skin and cut upwards. That way you're not cutting across the hairs and actually cutting off hair and getting it on the meat. You're still going to get some hair on the meat, just try to be as clean as possible. The silver skin, just go very lightly over it to help separate the skin. Be careful cutting around here, the Achilles tendon. If you cut through that tendon, your deer's not going to be hanging by its back leg anymore. So be careful to only cut the skin around the back of its ankle. We got one side, let's do the other. And by the way, it is easier to skin an animal when it's still warm, right after you kill it. This one I had to hang up. There's always going to be some fat on the back of the rump here. The amount of fat depends on the deer. You cut all the way through, and you'll see there's a bunch of white fat here that helps keep your knife out of the good roast. And when we get down to the tail, you want to find where the vertebrae are. The vertebrae are very small in the tail, obviously. So you just want to find the joint between two of them, and you can cut right through it with your knife. And there, the tail is separate. So cut through this fat, make sure we get it started. You can grab the tail, start skinning the whole back of the deer. Now the flank here, you look inside, see where the rib cage stops. You just cut the flank out. You can use the flank steak if you want. Usually it gets pretty dirty in the gutting process, dragging the deer out. I don't mess with it. It's not very much, and it's pretty tough. Just keep working it down the back of the deer till we get to the shoulders. Now, skinning around the shoulders can be difficult because of the armpit. Always remember when you're cutting with your knife, especially around joints, anything tough like this, always cut away from yourself. You never cut back towards yourself, because you're going to slip at some point and cut the crap out of your fingers. So once you get up into the shoulder and cut all that loose from the brisket, you can start to pop it loose. Once you pop the shoulder loose, see where you need to get your knife up underneath. And cut the shoulder away from the ribs. And it should all come out in one piece. Cut all the way up to the top of the spine. This shoulder's got a little damage from the shot. That's typical, especially with gun hunting. We can trim that up. So I went ahead and finished skinning this shoulder out all the way down so I could show you a little bit better what it's like popping the joint loose. You come up behind the elbow, cut down to the bone, cut all the way around. If you're not sure where to cut the joint, just move the shoulder like this and you'll see where the two separate bones move independently, and you can just kind of get your knife in there and cut all the connective tissue until you can pop it out of joint. And there you go. Now the neck is difficult to skin. It's just kind of tough, but it's not that bad. You can get a good neck roast out of even a doe like this with a skinny neck. There's a good bit of meat on there. I would recommend cooking this in the crock pot for several hours until the meat just falls off the bone. That's what neck roasts are good for. Once you got the neck skinned all the way down to the base of the head pretty much, the easy way to remove the head is a hacksaw. I don't have that handy, but what I usually do anyways is just cut straight through to the bone all the way around and do the same thing I do with the shoulder, except it's a little tougher because the vertebrae are such an odd shape to cut apart, but you can do it if you find where it moves between the two joints and just get your knife worked in there. Once again, always cut away from yourself. Now a lot of times once you've cut around enough and loosened up the joint, you usually just twist it right off. We can go right up here, kind of where the shoulder started, cut through, do the same thing up here, remove the whole neck roast. Again, it's better to use a hacksaw, it's quicker and easier. Now most people won't save the ribs off a deer. There's not much meat, there's a lot of fat. Deer fat's kind of waxy. Most people say deer fat tastes bad, but it doesn't. It just tastes like deer. It tastes like deer, really. But it's kind of waxy. As you can see, it's cold out, it's real waxy. So you want to trim as much off as possible. But a little bit won't hurt. We'll get to those in a minute. We're going to go do the most important cut on the deer. Now for the back strap. This deer's got a good little layer of fat on her, for Tennessee anyways. What we're going to do is basically fillet the back strap like you would fillet a fish. So you got the spine here, and the vertebrae stick up like this, and the ribs go out like that. And we're just going to fillet the strip off of both sides. We're going to start up here and keep the knife as close to the spine as possible. Go down to the rib bones. Get all the way down. And do it again just to make sure we got all the meat all the way down to the rib bones. And we're doing on the other side. Cut across at the back end, all the way down, on both sides. Now, there's a layer of membrane, silver skin, whatever, with the fat, if there is any, like this one, fat attached to it. And I like to peel that back first to get it out of the way. Now we're ready to fillet it off. Fillet it right off the rib bones, just kind of like a fish. Just use your knife to make sure that any parts of meat that get hung up don't start to tear. It'll tear your back strap apart. So make sure you keep your knife in there. Keep it all freed up as you pull the whole back strap away from the deer. And once you get down to the shoulder, it should just pull right out. This one got shot right here, so we're going to trim a lot of that. Now it's time to do the biggest cut of meat, what I like to use for jerky, and that is the hindquarters. Also, you get all your roasts and whatever you want out of this. Ground meat, roast, steak, jerky, anything you get out of the hindquarters. So basically the pelvic bone's kind of in a funny shape here. And so we will try to cut along with that to get as much meat as possible off of the bone. So straight down until you hit bone. Come outwards. And then there's a little lip. You work it around, cut back in, and then the bone kind of comes in like this, at this angle. So we're going to try to cut the meat off it like that, all the way down to where the back strap was. Now the way I do this is I cut it off the bone, straight off the deer. I don't want the bone in steak, I want to make jerky, so I want boneless roasts. The leg bone is somewhere in here. So we're going to cut through here. You feel the bone in there, cut on up. Now you can do what you want with the shank. It's a little bit of meat and that needs a lot of work. I'm going to cut most of it out. Cut at an angle like that. Go around the front of the knee joint here. And then we can just kind of slowly trim this off of the bone the whole way around. And there you have it, a boneless deer ham. That'll do it for this deer. I'll just take this one rack and clean it up good. You want to leave the extra layers of meat over the top because there's not much between the bones. We'll just trim the excess fat off of this. And last but definitely not least, we've got to get the tenderloins. Now this deer is covered full of fat. Basically, tenderloins will go on the inside of the deer where all the guts are, above the guts, between the rib cage and the hindquarters. So first we're going to remove these globs of fat from this deer. Alright, so our two tenderloins go here on the underside of the spine. You can really kind of remove these by hand. Get your fingers in between them and separate them from the spine, just like that. You may want to use a knife where they are attached up here just so you don't tear half of it out when you're removing it. So it's better to use a knife to get as much as possible all the way up in there. And they are very tender, as the name implies. It's easy to tear them. But that's a tenderloin right there. That is possibly the best part of the whole deer. I did kind of mess this one up, but it's okay. So that is all I'm going to take off this deer. If you want to be extra picky, trim all the little bits for the grinder, then go for it. I've got quite a bit of meat here off this deer I'm about to show you, and I will show you how to just quickly trim everything up and get ready for the final processing, get to the cuts you want. So let's get to that right now. So here is everything. We got 2 boneless hams, 2 back straps, tenderloins, 2 shoulders, neck roast, and a rack of ribs. I'm going to show you real quick how to trim these up. Since these shoulders took a little damage from the shot, I'm not going to use them to roast them whole. I'm going to trim around all that where dirt and everything else got in. Start going straight down the bone all the way down to the joint. Got that. We're just going to remove this in chunks or roasts, whatever you call it. This will probably end up in the grinder since I can't get a whole shoulder roast. I will demonstrate on the other one where there's less damage. This is the deer's left shoulder. This is the front. This is the armpit. That's the top shoulder blade here. We got the bone here. We got the shoulder blade here. So, like I just showed you, we'll cut off the lower portion. Alright, so this leaves us a little bit better view of the scapula. We'll trim this off here. And if you got blood in your meat, you definitely want to trim that off. Here we got this layer of fat and stuff. That's going to have to come off. And this is what I do not like about shoulder shots. Yeah, it'll put the deer down quick if you shoot him with a rifle in the shoulder, but anyway. We got the joint here, scapula, shoulder blade goes like that, and we got this ridge down the middle. It's kind of like filleting a fish. Again, you want to feel for that ridge. You got meat here, here, you feel the bone. There's a ridge right here. You just want to cut off either side of it. Now this is the outside of the shoulder blade, facing the outside of the deer, towards the skin. And there, you can get a whole chunk of meat off, and you can start to see the bone now. We'll do the other side. This is where the shot went through, so I'm not going to use too much of this because it got all dirty. You got fur and everything in it. Down to the joint here, cut right up flush with the bone. And we're going to trim it off right here and not use that shot up portion, but we still got that right there. Now you can really start to see. I'll turn this away so you can see. Do the other side real quick. This got some stuff needs trimmed off. Got that. Now you can start to see the shoulder blade. A little bit more to trim off of here. That's still good. That should be good enough. You can boil this, make stew or whatever, give it to your dog, whatever. There's different things you can do with the deer bones, but for now we've got all the meat off of this one shoulder, and it's quite a bit. So even for two shoulders that got shot up pretty bad, this is what we got out of it. This is all for the grinder. We'll cut it up into cubes. We'll trim off the worst of the silver skin and then cut the rest into cubes for the grinder. And for now we're going to go ahead and put these up in a Ziploc. The neck roast don't have to do too much. It's going to be slow cooked. We'll trim off the worst of it and we'll remove the windpipe because I don't think anybody wants to eat the windpipe, so we will get rid of that. And that's down here at the bottom, and basically trim back this thin layer of meat. And don't be surprised if you see little grubs in here. Sometimes deer will get bot flies and they're harmless, but it's just a little parasite that grows in the deer's respiratory system. So don't worry if you see bot fly grubs. They're not going to do anything to the meat. Just get rid of them. Get rid of that. I'll just leave that on because that's usable meat. And there's our neck roast. We'll trim off any excess blood. Now the back strap. This is pretty straightforward. And basically all you got to remove off of this is the silver skin on the top side. And I like to grab the thickest part, start a little cut just like skinning out a fish fillet if you've ever done that. The fillet knife actually works better than this. We'll just flip it around here. Remove that membrane. Trim off any excess little white spots. And that backstrap is ready to be cut into steaks. It's as simple as that. The hams, I'm going to separate them into a couple different roasts here. You just kind of go and see where the different muscle groups are and carefully work them apart. You're going to have this layer of fat on the backside that needs to go. This one's pretty thick. I'm not going to get too fancy with this because it's for jerky. It's going to be sliced up. I just need chunks that are manageable size to put on the meat slicer. So here's the 3 separate roasts I got out of one ham. These are just my jerky roasts. I'm going to freeze them and then thaw them halfway and then slice them. This rack of ribs, I'm just going to show you real quick how I like to do it. Try to keep as much of that meat on as possible, get as much of the fat off as possible. You're not going to get all the fat, that's okay. A little bit's not bad. It's actually pretty good with just a little bit of fat. This will be barbecued until the meat is ready to fall off the bone. So here is all the meat trimmed up and almost ready to go. We got our tenderloins; those are ready to cook. We got the grind meat. It's mostly shoulder, a little bit of trimmings off the hams. Back straps ready to cut into steak. These 2 bags of hindquarters cut into roast, trimmed up. These are just going straight to the freezer. They will be thawed out pretty soon to make jerky. Neck roast, the ribs. When you freeze your steaks or you freeze a roast, I like to fill just enough water to cover it, squeeze out all the air, and that will keep the freezer burn from getting into the meat. A little bit of water will not hurt it. It will help keep the freezer burn off of your meat when you go freeze it. So I'm going to go get a Sharpie and write the dates on all of these. Some of these will sit in the fridge for just a day or two. You can actually keep it in the fridge up to a week or a little longer, assuming the meat is clean and dry and your fridge is in the mid-30s. Nice and cold, it'll be fine for at least several days. It might even help it tender up a little bit as it ages in there. Anyway, we're going to get these ready to go here, and we will finish the rest of the processing here later. Well, thanks for watching. Hopefully it helped you out a little bit. Understand how to take your deer apart, break it down into all the cuts that you want. Like I said, I'm not an expert. You could probably watch a more in-depth video on how to get everything just right. But just for something simple that you can do yourself, save the money, take an extra hour or two and cut your deer up how you want it. Hopefully I showed you just a little bit of the basics on how to get it done. And so with that said, I'm going to get all this stuff packed up. It's getting late. Get everything put in the freezer, put in the fridge, and hopefully have some more videos for you on cooking and making jerky and stuff like that. So stay tuned for that. And once again, thanks for watching.